The clock was ticking toward full time in Lusail Stadium, but nobody was watching it. Every eye was locked on one man. Lionel Messi had the ball near the right touchline, and standing in front of him was Joško Gvardiol, the defender who had spent the entire World Cup making the world's best attackers disappear. Croatia had already stunned Brazil. They had survived 2 exhausting knockout matches. They had built a reputation as the team that simply refused to break. If anyone could stop Messi's final World Cup dream, it was them. Then, in just a few unforgettable seconds, everything changed. Messi leaned into Gvardiol, shielded the ball with impossible balance, spun away from the challenge, accelerated toward the byline, and left one of the tournament's best defenders desperately chasing shadows. The cross arrived perfectly. Julián Álvarez finished. The stadium exploded. That single moment didn't just seal Argentina's place in the final. It ended the greatest underdog story of the tournament. But Croatia's journey was never supposed to reach this stage in the first place. A nation of fewer than 4 million people had already eliminated giants, silenced favorites, and come within one match of another World Cup final. So how did football's biggest underdog push Lionel Messi to one of the defining performances of his career? Croatia's World Cup should have ended long before they ever saw Argentina. Instead, it kept finding new life. Their knockout journey began against Japan. For 120 exhausting minutes, neither side could find a winner. Every tackle grew heavier. Every sprint became slower. When the final whistle sent the match to penalties, the pressure shifted onto goalkeeper Dominik Livaković. One save. Then another. And another. As the Croatian players sprinted toward him in celebration, Japan collapsed to the grass. Croatia were through, not because they dominated but because they simply refused to crack. The quarter-final looked even more impossible. Brazil arrived full of confidence, packed with stars, and expected to cruise into the semifinals. When Neymar finally broke the deadlock in extra time, Brazilian fans celebrated as if the job was already done. Croatia had other ideas. With just minutes remaining, Mislav Orsic burst down the left before finding Bruno Petkovic. His shot took a cruel deflection, wrong-footed Alisson, and rolled into the net. The Croatian bench erupted. The Brazilian players stood frozen. One moment they were celebrating a semi-final place. The next, they were preparing for penalties. Once again, Livaković became the hero. He denied Rodrygo, Croatia converted 4 flawless penalties, and Brazil's stars were left in tears as Croatia celebrated another impossible escape. Now, only one obstacle remained between the tournament's greatest underdog and another World Cup final. It was a man chasing the one trophy that had always escaped him. December 13, 2022. More than 88,000 fans packed into Lusail Stadium, creating a wall of noise long before kickoff. Blue and white shirts filled one side. Red and white checkers filled the other. 2 nations stood just 90 minutes from the World Cup final. Croatia walked out with quiet confidence. They had already outlasted Japan. They had shocked Brazil. Luka Modrić, at 37 years old, calmly led his teammates onto the pitch, knowing this could be the final World Cup match of his extraordinary career. Around him, the Croatian players looked relaxed. They had already ruined one favorite's dream. Why not another? Across the halfway line stood Lionel Messi. This wasn't just another semi-final. It was the moment that could define everything. After the stunning defeat to Saudi Arabia in Argentina's opening match, every game had felt like a final. Victories over Mexico, Poland, Australia, the Netherlands, and now one last obstacle before the biggest stage of all. The opening minutes were exactly what Croatia wanted. They slowed the tempo, kept possession, and forced Argentina to chase. Modrić and Mateo Kovacic exchanged simple passes as the Croatian supporters found their voices. Argentina struggled to settle, and for a brief moment, it looked as though Croatia were beginning to control the game. Then, without warning, one perfectly timed counterattack turned the entire semi-final upside down, and a single refereeing decision would ignite debate long after the final whistle. It started with one clearance. Argentina broke through Croatia's midfield in seconds as Enzo Fernandez spotted Julián Álvarez racing into open space. Suddenly, the Croatian defense was retreating. Álvarez reached the ball first and pushed it past goalkeeper Dominik Livaković, who rushed off his line to block the chance. The collision sent Álvarez crashing to the turf. For a brief second, the stadium held its breath. Then the referee pointed to the penalty spot. Croatian players surrounded the official in disbelief. They argued that Livaković had simply stood his ground after making an attempt to save the ball. Argentina didn't care. They had been handed the biggest opportunity of the night. Lionel Messi picked up the ball. The pressure was enormous. One miss would hand Croatia fresh belief. One goal could completely change the match. Messi blasted his penalty high into the roof of the net. Livaković guessed correctly but had no chance. Luzail erupted. Croatia barely had time to recover before disaster struck again. Only 5 minutes later, Álvarez collected the ball inside his own half and charged forward. Croatian defenders threw themselves into challenges, but every ricochet seemed to fall kindly for the Argentine striker. He kept running, skipped past one final defender, and calmly slid the ball beyond Livaković.
He's only gone and done it again!
The night was still waiting, and it would belong to Messi alone. Croatia still believed they had a way back. With more than 20 minutes remaining, they pushed higher up the pitch, searching for one goal that could change the entire semi-final. Every attack carried urgency. Every Argentine clearance was greeted with nervous anticipation from the crowd. Then Messi received the ball near the right touchline. Waiting for him was Joško Gvardiol. The Croatian defender had been one of the stars of the tournament. He had frustrated Romelu Lukaku, helped shut down Brazil's attack, and looked destined for the biggest clubs in Europe. If anyone could stop Messi in a one-on-one duel, it was him. Messi stood almost still for a moment. Then he moved. He leaned into Gvardiol, shielding the ball with his body before suddenly spinning away. Gvardiol stayed with him, but Messi refused to let the ball go. Step by step, he carried the defender closer to the byline, twisting, turning, and protecting possession with impossible balance. The crowd rose to its feet. Gvardiol stretched for one last tackle. Messi slipped past him again. From the narrowest of angles, he cut the ball back across the 6-yard box. Julián Álvarez arrived at exactly the right moment, tapping home his second goal of the night. 3-0. Messi didn't score the goal, but he had created the moment everyone would remember. Croatia's remarkable journey was over. Only one challenge remained between Lionel Messi and the trophy that had defined his entire career. The final whistle echoed around Luzail Stadium, and the contrast could not have been sharper. Argentine players sprinted onto the pitch, embracing one another as blue and white flags waved across the stands. Lionel Messi stood in the middle of the celebrations, smiling, but only briefly. He knew the job wasn't finished. Just a few yards away, Croatia stood in silence. Luka Modrić slowly applauded the traveling supporters before making his way off the field. His dream of lifting the World Cup was over, yet the Croatian fans responded with thunderous applause. Their team had once again defied every expectation, eliminating Brazil and reaching another semi-final despite being written off before the tournament began. As Argentina celebrated, attention immediately shifted to the other side of the bracket. France, the defending world champions, had just defeated Morocco to reach another World Cup final. Kylian Mbappé was chasing back-to-back titles at just 23 years old. Antoine Griezmann was orchestrating everything from midfield. Olivier Giroud had become France's all-time leading scorer. The headlines wrote themselves. The greatest player of his generation against the player many believed would inherit football's throne. Messi had waited his entire career for one last chance to lift the World Cup. But standing between him and football immortality was the strongest team in the tournament, one that had no intention of giving up its crown. The greatest ending imaginable was now only 90 minutes away. December 18, 2022. Luzail Stadium was louder than it had been all tournament. Nearly 89,000 fans filled every seat, knowing they were about to witness one of the biggest matches in football history. Argentina struck first. Ángel Di María finished a sweeping counterattack after Messi had opened the scoring from the penalty spot, and before halftime the scoreboard read 2-0. Argentine supporters were singing. French players looked stunned. It felt as though Messi's lifelong dream was finally becoming reality. Then everything unraveled. With less than 10 minutes remaining, Kylian Mbappé scored from the penalty spot. Barely a minute later, he volleyed home an incredible equalizer. In the space of 97 seconds, the World Cup final had been turned upside down. Extra time brought another twist. Messi reacted quickest after Lautaro Martinez's shot was saved, poking the ball over the line to restore Argentina's lead. He roared toward the crowd, believing the trophy was finally his. But France refused to surrender. A late handball gave Mbappé another penalty. He completed his hat-trick, making it 3-3 and sending the final to a penalty shootout. When Gonzalo Montiel converted the decisive kick, Argentina's players collapsed to the turf in tears. Messi fell to his knees before being swallowed by his teammates, the weight of decades lifting in an instant. Croatia never stopped Messi's dream. They tested it, stretched it, and forced Argentina to earn every step. And perhaps that's what made the ending so unforgettable. So what do you think? Was Croatia the toughest opponent Messi faced on his road to World Cup glory? Or did the final against France eclipse everything that came before? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more football documentaries that uncover the story behind football's greatest moments.